Can you give me a clap?
Is that good enough?
No.
Oh.
There you go.
That'll work.
That was perfect.
Thank you.
And then
Shatter
you can
be so disappointed.
get started. That's his favorite part.
I know,
of the
yeah,
whole thing.
exactly.
It really is.
He nails it too
Yeah.
every time. So
Yeah. He always knows right when I'm about to ask for a clap because he sees me like take a breath to say something,
And he's
and then
just like-
immediately he just goes in for it.
beats you.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right. Anyway. Kelsey here. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about this week's episode. The recording ran much longer than normal, so we decided to split it into 2 parts. So don't be super surprised if it feels like it ends abruptly. Part 2 will be dropping next week to keep the conversation going. Thanks for listening and or watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Welcome back to From Start to Finish, the podcast. I am your host today, Morgan, the digital marketing manager here at Nix. I have Mikey here as a guest with me who will be helping. I know, it's amazing. Very excited. This is the second episode in our boot buying guide that we're doing. There will be quite a few, so hang on for those. Today, we're going over the anatomy of a boot. We're actually going to follow the boot making process. Mikey, our resident expert, is going to answer all of my questions, and hopefully none of them are too silly.
There's no such thing as a silly question.
Yeah, you say that, and then I'll ask it.
I can give you a silly answer probably.
Okay, I like that. That's a good plan. So if you missed the first episode, go back and check that out. If you have questions about the boot buying process, things that you want to know, things you're curious about, things you've run into before, let us know in comments and we'll address things on future episodes. Let's start with the basics. So there are 2 parts of a boot. You've got your uppers and your lowers, which I've learned. So I feel very smart now. Do you want to explain to us, though, to the audience especially, what is the difference between the upper and the lower part of the boot?
Sure. So the upper is the leather part of the shoe that goes around your ankle and covers your foot. And then the lower is what you're walking on. So the outsole, the midsole, and the inner sole.
Perfect. And also, as a note, we did make a diagram with the terms for the boot anatomy. So if you're listening, watching, and you want to follow along, you can download that on our website. We'll have links wherever you're watching this to get it. Yeah, that would be super helpful. Maybe a nice resource for the employees too.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Now, quick question. We do rebuilds on a boot. So I'll give the audience a chance to answer. Actually, I'll quiz the audience first. When we do a boot rebuild, do you think, audience, that we rebuild the upper or the lower or both? Imagine the Jeopardy music, because I'm sure we can't afford it, but it's playing. It's playing. Okay. Mikey, what is the answer?
On a rebuild, we're going to build you a brand new boot with old quarters.
Yeah.
So,
and that's something that we used to do with all types of shoes.
Yeah,
like
handmade.
Yeah.
When shoes are handmade and the materials are the high quality materials like we use and some of the other handmade shoemakers, then we can still do that. But mass produced footwear is not produced to be rebuilt. It's produced to be replaced.
Yep.
So
it's throwaway. Exactly. Before we get into the boot making process, let's chat real quick about the P&W boot. So I know that this making process is a bit different from other types of boots.
Mm-hmm.
Could you kind of describe what makes P&W leather boot construction unique?
So the way that we and some of the other manufacturers do things is completely different than what you might see at a generally like Walmart, for example, or even unfortunately like say Vans sneakers. Pacific Northwest style construction is heavy duty. Our ancestry, if you will, is the people we were making boots for back then were loggers
Mhm.
and construction workers, and, excuse me, and people that were on their feet, working really, really hard, putting boots through difficult
Mm.
a difficult day of work.
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest boot typically has a raised heel. It has a built-in orthotic, which is the reason that we have to have a raised heel
Mhm.
like we do. A lot of customers, maybe like in the Midwest, they're not really super familiar with a Pacific Northwest style of construction because most of the boots that they use or have worn have a crepe sole
Mhm.
or a one-piece, a unit sole, and that's what they're familiar with.
Yeah.
The reason typically, most of the boots that were produced in the past were for loggers or firefighters, and they're out in the woods and they're, side hilling, climbing mountains,
Mhm.
hiking on difficult terrain. They're not walking on concrete all day.
Yeah.
Not that our boots aren't good for that too, but that's why they're built the way
Mhm.
they are. And we still hold to those traditional construction methods.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. So B&W boot really born from the nature of the wilderness out
Yeah.
here, for sure.
Yeah.
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 Wonderful. Okay, so moving into the actual boot making process. So we're going to start at cutting or skiving. Is that how you pronounce
Skiving,
it?
actually. Yeah.
Skiving.
Skiving, yes.
Like skiving snack boxes from Harry Potter. I should have known that. I should have known that. It's a British term, I'm pretty sure.
Probably.
Yeah, I think
More than
I think
likely.
it's got a British application. But okay, so we go to cutting first. Now, this is where we're cutting the pieces for the upper from the hide. So we're cutting out the leather shape there. Describe that process to me a little bit, Mikey. How are we doing it? How's it working?
Well, the folks that work in the cutting department have a series of dies that are shaped in such a way that they can pick out the best parts of the hide, set their die in place, and then we use a hydraulic press that punches down and takes the piece out of the hide.
Mm.
They're going to be cutting 2 vamps, 2 counter pockets, 4 quarters for left and right, a series of other interesting little pieces that would make no sense whatsoever to anyone that's not a shoemaker.
Mhm.
In the old days, we did a lot of grouping. When I actually cut years ago, most of the boots we were making were not made to order. They
Mhm.
were a lot of dealer orders that were a run of the same style of shoe, same color, just different sizes.
Mm.
So we would do 10 pair groups. I'd cut 10 pairs of a certain style, stack them all together, send them to the upper department.
Mhm.
Same, and then just all day long. That's how we cut leather. Now, it's a lot more complicated than that because of the availability of the different styles of leather that we build shoes out of. These guys they have to kind of assess a hide rather quickly
Mhm.
to look for flaws. The truth is when we're putting the boot together, if we make a mistake in cutting and we cut an inferior piece, it can affect the way the boot is lasted. It can affect the way the boot feels when the customer puts it on. It can affect the wear. It can affect so many things. So we're really, as with every other department, we're really counting on these guys and gals to, it's a skill.
Mhm.
And they're really good at what they do.
Yeah.
You know,
I know we're picky about it too. We
Yeah,
will not use
very.
parts of the hide that do not
Nope.
pass our standards.
and we'll send hides back to the manufacturer
Yep.
if they don't fit our criteria.
Right. So, at the beginning of the boot making process, I should say, is a super important step. Obviously, every step is going to be important, but this is
course.
really where we're starting with a good foundation of
bet.
quality leather,
Absolutely.
all of that. Okay, so we have cut everything out, selected beautiful leather for this. Moving on to the next step, we actually bring the boot to, does anybody know who's listening? Good job. We bring it to sewing. Exactly. I'm assuming everyone said sewing next. Now, this is where the uppers actually get sewn together, the quarters that you were talking about, those little pieces that are cut.
Yes.
Do you want to describe that process to me, Mikey, even
Sure.
though, sewing?
So you talked about the skiving.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the pieces need to be what would you call that? Like beveled, I guess. It's kind of a beveled edge. So we thin the leather down a little bit so that when the pieces marry together, it's a little less hard of a transition between two pieces. So that's part of the process. There's a little bit of gluing involved, but mostly we have these very highly skilled people sewing our uppers together. That is the one thing I've never done in the shop, and I would never want to even try.
Yeah.
Because it's the real thing. These guys are super, super highly skilled. I'm going to plug Katrina on this. She's amazing. We are really fortunate to have her as our lead in the upper department. We have a bunch of other people too. Mm-hmm. And so me mentioning her is not at the expense of anyone else.
For sure,
I just, Aldert is amazing. They're all amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a special machine that they're using back there. It's a post machine. Most people are really familiar with a flatbed sewing machine. And we do use a flatbed for some things, not a whole lot. Most of the machines we're using, as far as sewing goes, it's a post bed machine. So there's a post that comes up and a wheel is rolling. You got to go on and watch the videos and watch these guys do this stuff. It's absurdly satisfying. They're so good at it and they're so fast. It's incredible, And the thing is those stitches, probably most customers are. And rightly so, you're looking at the stitching on your boot for cosmetic appeal. But the fact is, without those stitches being in the right place, without the SPI that we use, stitches per inch, the spacing, it's really gonna make or break the boot.
Yeah.
I mean, without good sewing, you might as well start all over.
Yeah,
because
it's just going to fall apart.
It's not going to hold up just to the building process.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's very important. It's so much more than just how pretty it is.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
But they are really pretty too.
Right. It does have the beautiful parts. Now, about how long does the sewing process take for a boot, would you say?
I would say average to put the entire upper together, probably half an hour.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit longer. Depends on what kind of leather it is. It depends on the style, the size. Some of the styles we make are a lot more complicated, so they're going to take a lot more time. But on average, I think a really experienced sewer can do probably, say, like 10 or 12 pair a day.
Okay.
So they're hauling. They're moving right along.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And those machines go so fast.
Oh boy.
Too. Ooh,
yeah.
My fingers. Let's talk about some common questions that we get. So we get asked a lot, can you just sew a knife sheath or a fill in the blank? Can you just sew it on there? Is it that easy, Mikey?
We would love to be able to do that all the time. If a customer says, hey, can you just put a quick knife sheath on there? Or can you sew a D-ring here or there? Or just, honestly, no.
We can't.
I mean, we can, but we're not gonna.
Yeah.
Because, we're just so busy. We just have so much work to do. And, of course you would love to customize everybody's stuff, but I can tell you this, if we started a program that was away from the main production, you're going to have to pay for that stuff.
Yeah.
Like a lot more because, we have this thing kind of down to a science. Like it's it's just it's a machine, if you will.
Yeah.
So, those little things that would be really cool. It would be cool, and check it out from time to time. You never know. We did that collab boot with buck knives,
Yep.
and that had a knife sheath on it.
Yeah.
And that's how it's. If you're gonna get something like that, that's how it's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's gonna be a collab.
It's
or
gonna be
run.
something that we stop and set up for to do more than one pair.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna do a lot of pairs, so that it doesn't disrupt the flow of the work.
Right.
We already have enough disruptions as it is. So
That makes a lot of sense. So we love the creativity. We love the ideas. We just can't do a lot of these extra things.
It's just a time. It's a time issue more than anything else.
That makes sense. All right, Mikey. So we've sewed the boot. We're moving on to hardware.
Okay.
That's what comes next. So in hardware, you can imagine, audience, I assume, that we are going to add things like hooks and eyes here. Mikey, what is this process like?
So we take the upper. It's sewn together. It's just kind of a flop piece. It's just a big, doesn't look anything really like a boot quite yet. It's starting to, but we have a couple of different machines that put brass in, the brass eyelets and hooks. We also offer lots of different colors for the hardware. And so some of those are put in by hand rather than using machine. And yeah, it's a pretty cool machine. Of course, I've run those as well, trained lots of people to use them. The eyelet machine is a little bit intimidating because it will fire continuous. It's kind of an automatic, has a foot pedal, and if you leave your foot down, it'll just run eyelets. Brrr, So you got to kind of get a feel for it, kind of feather that pedal and punch, kind of a deal. But the hook machine is a lot more forgiving.
Okay.
It's a little slower, but nevertheless, they're pretty high tech machines. They're self feeding. They load up kind of a magazine, if you will, full of hooks or eyelets, and it just kind of keeps going, man. And, Connor is back there. He's the man. Keeps that going, and plus he's boxing boots and taking photos, and he does a really good job.
Shout out to Connor.
Yeah, good dude.
Now, the hardware part of the boot, do you feel like this affects the wearing experience of the boot?
Sure.
Do you think it's just aesthetics? Like, what are your thoughts?
Not even. Not at all. I mean, we want it to be aesthetically pleasing, of course, but if we put the hooks and eyes, if we get them, out of alignment, you go to lace your boot, and it could lace crooked, or it could, if we get the hooks and eyes out of alignment in the space that they're supposed to be in, that can be a problem. If we miss, a hook or eyelet that wasn't set properly, they can pop out.
Oh,
it happens. No worries. We'll fix it for you.
Right.
Hopefully, again, like I say, we're trying to make sure all that stuff is done properly before we get it into the box. But if you get your boots and you start to lace them up and a hook pops out, you send them right back. We're going to take care of it.
Perfect. Now, I've heard people talk about speed hooks. What's the benefit of having speed hooks? Why would I want those?
So, especially if you have a boot that's, say, 10 inches tall or taller, 10, 12, 14, or 16, these hooks are kind of designed for you to take both laces and you get them in your hand kind of tight, and you can just get good enough to just move your hand back and forth across those hooks, and it just laces it up really fast.
Gotcha.
When I was on the sales floor, I would bedazzle the customers sometimes.
With doing that real fast.
Speed hook them up real quick, and they're just like, wow. Yeah.
So maybe for people who don't love lacing their boots up every single day or have professions where you got to be fast, like I imagine in a fire crew, you really can't be taking 90 years to lace your boots.
And on that note, you mentioned, like a station boot, for example. That's what the zipper is a great option for.
Right.
You get your boots broke in, you lace the zipper in, the alarm goes, you're jumping up, boom, you put your boot on, zip, no lacing.
Gotcha.
It's already done.
Yeah.
Talk about speed lacing. That's the fastest.
No
there.
lacing is the new speed lacing.
No lacing, right. Just zipper up and away you go.
Perfect. Okay, so looking for when they're buying the boot, considering kind of that experience, do we need these to come on fast? Do we hate lacing things? Consider that. We also will have a pull-on boot that people can get. So that's a nice, quick Saturday chore boot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very nice. So after hardware, we move on to lasting or wet lasting. So this is actually pulling your boot into shape. This is how your boot size, that's where your boot size comes into play there.
Correct.
Explain that process to me.
And that's it for this episode. We left you a little bit of a cliffhanger there. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us. We're excited to continue the conversation next week, so stay tuned for part 2, where we'll talk about the construction of the lower portion of a handmade boot. Until then, thanks for watching and have a great day.
Actually sold the very first in the company, personal Canon copy machine.
Oh.
So it was like a desktop copier.
Yeah.
I sold the first one in the whole company.
Wow.
That's funny.
Yeah. They actually had a meeting, like a dinner meeting, and my department manager took me to this manager's meeting, and they had this big certificate and all this crap,
Wow.
Oh yeah,
It's a big deal.
I've been
no
a
kidding.
star since
Since day one.
since I was
apparently.
born.
Yeah.
Born a star. Yeah,
know.
exactly.
Wow.
So
Incredible.
yeah, that's what I did.